Chapter 15, Creating Graphics. Alright, in this lesson I'm going to cover the essential graphics panel, what's in there. Working with video typography, in other words text, creating graphics, stylizing text, and then where you could find motion graphics templates and how to use those. Making text roll and crawl, and then add and modify captions. Start by opening lesson number 15. So open project and go to 15. And then save that as lesson 15 working and save. Go ahead and get into the graphics workspace. So here under graphics, make sure you double click that to reset the workspace. Or you could of course done the menu on the side, reset, same thing. Some of the things that the book talks about when it comes to fonts in general, I will cover in class, so I'm not going to go over that in this lesson. At first, I want you to open up the sequence clouds if it's not already open, and then take a look at what that shows. So it says Cloudscape. So when you switch to the graphics workspace, you get these essential graphics panel to show up. And just to show what that looks like here, it's either at the top browse or edit. So browse is where you find templates, which we'll go over later, but edit is where you can modify or create graphics. If it's blank, that's because you have nothing selected yet. So if you were to select this text that's already been created for you, now you get the chance to make modifications to it. So that's what we'll do next. On the left side as well, for the effect controls, you have some ability to change some things as well. For example, you can fade in the graphic, of course. So first, you'll see at the top you have two layers, Cloudscape and then Shape. So you have the text and then you have a shape underneath that. If you click Shape 02, you get additional information underneath that. Okay, let's take a look at some of these options for Shape 2 then. If you were to center everything on the screen, you would hit these two buttons. And here's where it is positioned. Scaling, and you can also unlock then for the width and the height. Opacity, if it's going to be somewhat transparent. And then pay attention to like these alignment here. If you have multiple selected, you can select them all and have them aligned together. But the colors, just like Photoshop, if you were to do the color picker, it will pick the color anywhere on the screen, so you can then kind of match something in the video. See how that works? I want that blue, it should give me the blue there. Okay. And then you can of course unselect it or just select the color like so. And then the text layer, if you click Cloudscape, now you get different options for modifying that for the text itself. For example, what font, the alignment, you have the tracking, leading, and so forth. We will do that here in a bit. And of course the different colors if you want to have a shadow added to it or a stroke. And just as in Photoshop, you can make it bold, all caps and so forth, underlined. We're going to look at what kerning is, which is the spacing between letters. So for that, go to your assets in the project panel, open that up, and then find the one that says white cloudscape. We're going to put this on track 2. So all you have to do there is hold and drag it to where that lands on track 2 over the clouds. So now you can take your playhead and move it, and we'll change the spacing between these letters by kerning. It only works either by letter or by space. So like the book says, to make a space between cloud and scape. Now you can, right here, adjust the kerning, but it won't work on all the letters at the same time. So if I highlight them all, it's not even available to me. So I'm not going to do what the book says to do, to go through each letter and then space them out. It's easier than to go with the tracking. So for the tracking, you can highlight the entire word and then just increase the tracking like so. You can either highlight, put the number in, or you can just hold and drag the blue numbers to increase the tracking or the space between each letter at the same time. When you're down, you want to center that text. Then you would go to your vertical center, horizontal center, and now it sits right in the middle of the screen. Or you can just choose to do horizontal center, and it stays at that level, but it's centered again. I'm going to center the text, and then I'll do that again so it's centered. So again, I hit the highlight of the text, center justify, and then your horizontal center before we move on. Normally, if it's just text sitting in the middle of the screen, you always want to make it centered. If you're using text for a lower third, like a person's name or a place, it most likely be left justified or right justified. Alright, looking at leading next, that's the spacing between each line. So we're going to add a line of text here. So you want to double click the text, hit the arrow key so that you get to the end of that text, or the right arrow key, hit enter or return to get to the next line of text, and then we're going to start typing with all caps a new land. So a new land. And then we're going to change that font, so then highlight it all again, change it to be size 48. I'm just going to highlight and type it. And then tracking should be 1000. So 1000. And then this. So your leading, that should be 40. So come down to about 40. Then you can click away from that. Okay, so that now may not be enough contrast to see the a new land. Cloudscape is pretty clear, but then you can come back then and then highlight that a new land and then increase the leading from 40 to 140. And as you do that, you can see that the text second line starts to go down. Now that you use the selection tool again, you have a much better contrast, and this is the key here for text. To be able to read it on the screen, you want to have some good contrast. it would be very hard to read white text on a yellow background. So if it's a yellow, choose black text. For colorful text, I would recommend either black or white. That's the most common used. Very few instances would you choose any other color than those two. When you are adding text or graphics to video and you know this is going to be something that could potentially be broadcast on TV, then you have something called action safe and title safe areas. So you would access those by going to the wrench for program monitor here. It's the settings icon. If you click that, for the program monitor, it will show you right here under safe margins. This is toggled on or off. You have a 10% and a 20% reduction of the screen, and it's designed this way to ensure that all monitors would display this information. So if your text for some reason is positioned outside of this furthest box, it may not show up on all TVs. Now, for just overall layout purposes, you would never want to put a text that sits that close to the edge of the screen anyway. It looks odd. So you would need to, by default, place your text, of course, either center, like here, or starting it kind of where that outermost box is. Now technically, because TVs have improved, of course, in the past 40 years, it's not going to be that drastic of a change from one to the next. So this is kind of a conservative approach. You could potentially start your text halfway, but again, for layout, I would highly recommend not doing that because it doesn't quite look right. When you start to type text with nothing else there, like from scratch, there are two ways of doing that, either point text or paragraph text. With point, you simply just click your cursor somewhere and start typing, and you would have to manually hit enter or return to get to the next line. Otherwise, your text would just keep running off the screen. With paragraph, you can kind of figure out how much of the screen are you going to dedicate to text, and then you just kind of draw a box first with your cursor before you start typing, and it'll automatically go to the next line when you reach the end of that box that you set. So that is paragraph text. So we'll see what each one does. So for this one, we're going to go to a new sequence. So the O2 cliff here, open that, and we're going to use the text tool, of course. Make sure you're in the beginning of the sequence, either drag or hit the home button on your keyboard, and then use your type tool, and then anywhere in here click once and then type the Dead Sea. Okay, because we had something already on track 1, when you add new text, it's going to know to put it on the next available layer that's empty, which happens to be track 2. Let's change the size and some other things. So to select the text, all you gotta do is use the selection tool, and it selects it for us. We can change this to Arial bold. So bold, tracking should be 0, size should be 83. So highlight 83. And then leading should be 0 as well. Fill colors white. Okay, they don't have a shadow, so let's take that off. Okay, and then we'll see if we can size this. If you grab a corner, now it will size like so. And undo that. Pay attention to this area right here when I'm doing that. This scaling will change, but not the font size. It remains at 83. So if I increase, that still is 83. If I were to click this here, the scale lock, to undo that, when I size it, it will not do it proportionately, and you can essentially mess up your text. So don't do that. I'm going to undo that and then turn it back on. Rotating it next, I can move this text around, but I can also rotate it by these arrows right here, and the anchor point sitting in the bottom left, I could potentially move that, and now it rotates from the center. But we're going to give it a certain degree, so 45 right there. And now you have what the book wants you to do, a 45-degree angle. We'll set it in this corner, and if you don't view track 1 by toggling this output, you'll see it against black. But if I change that, hang on here, okay, undo that, and then we'll see what it looks like over transparency. It's really hard to read now, right? So what you would do then is change the stroke down here to be black instead. So enable it first, click on the white, change that to black, and size go up to 7. Now you can read it. Just doing that to show you that a stroke can do a world of difference to a text to help further increase the legibility of it. So if I undo this again, sure enough you can see it, but you got to be careful so that you don't overdo it. You got to be subtle about it, because if you go too much, then it'll just look bad. If I up that to 14, it just becomes too much, too stylized. Paragraph text. Get your tab tool out. Playhead can be in the beginning. Instead of just clicking, we're going to hold and drag out a box. So something like this till you get to about the middle of the screen. There. And just type 3 names. The third one should be much longer. So enter after every name. Alright, so what happens here is, you see when you get to the edge of this box, it's just going to keep a wrap around and go to the next line. So to prevent that and to resize this box, then you can just hold the corner and drag it. And now you see that your full name for this person will fit. Keep even go further. I had quite a bit of a long last name here. So now you can then size the box accordingly. So instead of the text itself increasing in size with paragraph text, you're just sizing the box itself and the text will stay the same size. Now I'm saying again, you should stick to white and black text, but for just to see how to do it then, and as the book does it, we're going to make the Dead Sea. Click that to select it, and then we'll make it a yellowish tint to match the rocks. So instead of clicking there, you can go straight to the eyedropper tool here for the fill. And again, as you move over any part of the screen, it'll catch that. So just kind of find a bright yellow taupe looking color and then click that. And then select the other box with the selection tool. We're going to fill that with a blue. The same thing, eyedropper tool, and find a real pale blue, not white, but almost white. Right there, they're good. There. Okay, so now if you were to kind of spend some time on a certain font and you like it, you can save that as your master style that you can get back to. So with this text box selected, it's actually on down. So go down to the middle here, master styles. There, do the drop down and then choose create master text style and give it a name so you know what it is. We're going to call this blue bold text. Then hit OK. And now you should be able to get back to that. See, it's added under that. So now we have this. We can easily change this text up here. So selection tool, select that. And then under master styles, choose that blue bold text and it changes it for us to be the same as the other one. As a rule, when you're working with something in your sequence, this item also exists in your project panel, but that may not ring true for graphics text that you create. So for example, this text box will not show up in the project panel. It does because we created a master style. But let's see an example. If you go to clouds that we worked on earlier, okay, we have cloudscape here, and then we want to add on cloudscape tracking title again. I'm going to just drag that over to here. So basically I'm going to reduce this one. So we have white cloudscape, cloudscape tracking. Okay, we're going to add on white cloudscape that we worked on earlier onto the same track. So I'm going to delete this one, cloudscape, and then move the one we changed here to the beginning. I'm going to take another one of these and put it on here. And as I'm going from one to the next, it's the same because this one was created as a master graphic. How you would add something to a master graphic to be able to get back to. You would select it in the sequence, go to graphics, and because this one's already a master graphic, it won't show for me, but if I do, let's see if this one will do it. I guess it's the same way. Graphics, and it would say upgrade to master graphic to make that accessible into the project panel. Switching gears, we're going to add a graphic to a graphic clip by the form of a logo. So for this one, go ahead and open up sequence 4 logo. So 04, double click, and I have this sequence open. I'm going to hit backspace or backslash so I can see the sequence better. Alright, from here we're going to go to make sure that your add a logo graphic clip is highlighted in your sequence. And then up on your Essential Graphics panel, then go to this new layer. So this is one layer and this is one layer, part of that graphic. So we're going to go to new layer, then from file, and from here you're going to navigate to your assets. So lessons, Premiere, assets, going to be graphics. Should one called logo. Then double click or hit OK. That imports it. With the selection tool, now you can move it down and then size it down as well. Now you can see it's part of that graphic as a layer, new layer. Then to fine tune the position, you can take this here and then kind of drag it down to get that centered on the bar. Okay, as you probably noticed that I completely just skipped over shapes part, creating shapes, and it's because if you're gonna add a shape, do it in Photoshop or Illustrator. It'll work much better. Forget about creating shapes in Premiere. It's just like the same concept of creating or editing video instead of Photoshop. You're much better suited to edit your video in Premiere. That's what it's for. This next concept is pretty cool. It's where you can take text and then you can fill it with something else. So let's do that next. You're masking, basically. You're saying use the text as the cutout. Whatever the text is, that's what you're gonna use for filling your graphic, your video with. So go to sequence number 5. Mask, open that up, and then on graphic, select that on your timeline, then move to the beginning of your timeline. With the graphic still selected, use your type tool, and then in all caps type Ivy. And then we're going to, you can use the selection tool and make it bigger. And you can center it on the screen. Make it even bigger. And center it. Center aligned. And you can keep going there. So it looks like I need to go to about 608. Clearly no more than that. Alright, so 683. I'm going to come down to right about there. And then at the bottom of the Essential Graphics panel, all the way at the bottom, you have Mask with Text. Select that. And now your text is filled with that Ivy layer, and it appropriately is called, it says Ivy on the screen. So if you play that now, your video is playing, you could potentially have that as video as well, but it just happens to be a still graphic. I'm going to take it a step further from the book and show you what else is possible just through a few more clicks. So if I'm looking at the layer for Ivy, this one right here, I can on and off visibility. I notice that the size is 59%. So I get the feeling that it is full screen at 100%. So I'm going to change that to 100. And I'm going to select the text again. And then instead of mask with text, I'm going to add invert. And now I am actually showing through the letters whatever's underneath on the video there. So everything else except for the Ivy is cut out because I'm inverting my mask. So if I'm playing now, it's going to show the footage underneath. Of course, it wouldn't have to be a still image of Ivy. It could be a full screen graphic or just black. Moving on to making text roll on the screen. We're going to go back to the 04 logo sequence. And here we're going to add some ending credits. And because by default a transparent background in Premiere is black, right? We're going to use that to our advantage and then just add text to that. So we're going to add point text. So use the type tool and then just click kind of toward the top somewhere. We'll format it later, but for now just add in random text. I'm going to change my transparency back to black. So wrench, settings, transparency grid, and we're back. So I'm just going to go, well, that is kind of enormous text. I'm going to come down to maybe 30. Okay. Directed by Maxim logo, produced by any text will do. Just type in a few random words and names. Okay, I'm going to make sure that's center aligned, centered on the screen, change the font to white, like so, and then maybe this gets, well, actually all the text should be bigger. And this will go to 75, 75, 75, 100. Okay. Now make sure you get the selection tool, and then this is still selected, so select, click somewhere else, and now you'll have options for this text. So if you then click roll, you have some options for, do you want it to start off screen and end off screen? Maybe I'll end it on the screen and then ease out. Maybe I'll do that. And I'll play it back and see what happens. Okay, so then it comes to an end right there. If I do end off screen, it's going to go off the screen. So there are different options here that you can play around with. For example, pre-roll. How much delay do you have, so you can increase that a little bit. Post-roll, same thing. How much time do you add on to after the credits are done to where it just sits in black, and so forth. So it's just a matter of playing around with that. Next we'll look at motion graphics templates. You can create your own, but you can also use some that are already made for you, and then you can kind of customize those to your liking. So we've been working in the edit portion of Essential Graphics. If you then hop over to Browse, now you can scroll here on the right side and go through a bunch of these already made for you. Depending on what you want to do, there's quite a bit of sports related ones. So some of these, they look fancy, but the drawback is if you were to drag this over, it takes a lot of computing power, and it might take you a long time to even get it to transfer over. I'm going to show you probably just a simple one like this little live logo. So I can just hold that and drag it over to any of these tracks. And this one wasn't too bad, it came over pretty quick. Some of these of course are animated, and that's how you would then edit this, customize. You can then highlight it, and then when you look at the edit, the title, you can then change it to on scene perhaps. So now it says on scene. And then you can change the highlight color maybe to a blue. You can see it changing to blue. Now the font says then you may not have the right font installed, and it might ask you to install that right font. But you can also change the font by yourself to do, let's say, an Arial, and then maybe Arial bold, and it's starting to look better already. So there's definitely some customization you can do. You can also either buy more templates, or you can even, some sites online, unless they're real sketchy sites, you can even find some free templates, and they'll probably tell you how to install them, and then you can kind of make them your own, but they can really save you some time to have to kind of create something from scratch. So something to keep in mind. A little bit about closed captions. I'm not going to go over how to create closed captions in Premiere, and I'll tell you why. Because you're more likely to create the video, and then you can actually, when you upload it to YouTube, YouTube has a functionality of transcribing it for you, and then you can actually go into YouTube settings and changing whatever YouTube didn't pick up. Maybe it heard a wrong word and you can just change it, but it's many more times faster, quicker, easier to do that way. Should you even need to download those subtitle files from YouTube, there's some sites that allow you to do that as well. But that is the more quicker and easier way to do it. I would say that oftentimes for subtitles, I think it's even good to have subtitles overlaid, because if you think about it, when you're watching a video, oftentimes you're not listening to it, but you're rather just watching it. If you have text there to read at the same time, I think that just makes it more user-friendly for whoever's watching it, so they don't have to turn on the sound if they don't want to. Plus, of course, those who are hard of hearing then will have that as well to refer to. So just something to think about. I think more and more I'm seeing video go toward using subtitles either as an option or just simply overlaid over the video as it is. And I believe that is the end of the lesson for today.